Have you ever had a feeling so clear, so physical, you almost said it out loud, but you didn't, because there was no evidence, no reason, no logic, just that rising certainty that something was about to change. And then it did. The betrayal, the accident, the goodbye that hit like a door slamming in your chest, and in that moment it wasn't just grief that arrived, it was something else, the realization that you knew, and you didn't trust it. We tell ourselves stories to survive uncertainty, that it was a coincidence, a trick of the mind and an overreaction, but what if it wasn't? Carl Jung believed those moments, the ones you can't explain, are not accidents. He believed they're the voice of the unconscious, trying to reach you through intuition, symbol and sensation. He called intuition a core function of the psyche, not a feeling, not a hunch, but a psychological compass that perceives possibilities the conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet. It's the part of you that gathers data you didn't know you were gathering. It listens without words, it sees without eyes, and sometimes it knows before anything else can. Jung once wrote, "Intuition gives outlook and insight. It revels in the garden of magical possibilities." But we've been taught to distrust magic, to worship certainty, to kill the whisper and obey the noise. And so, when that moment comes, when the soul speaks first and the mind isn't ready, we do what we've been taught, we ignore it, we override it. And later we wonder why we hurt. This isn't superstition, it's a memory, because your body remembers what your ego refused to hear. And here's the part no one tells you, that knowing isn't always there to stop what's coming. Sometimes it's there to prepare you, to soften the blow, to ready the soul. And if you're still doubting that power, think of the last time you felt it, the shiver in your gut, the silence that said too much, the dream that made no sense until it did. That wasn't fantasy. That was your future whispering your name. She dreamed of a beetle, gold, sacred, alive with ancient meaning. The next day she sat across from Carl Jung, describing it in careful detail. It had been given to her in the dream. Strange, powerful, impossible to forget. Then came a soft, insistent tapping at the window. Jung turned, opened it, and there it was. A scarabaeid beetle, rare for the region, nearly identical to the one from her dream, flew into the room. Jung didn't flinch. He handed it to her and said, "Here is your scarab." That moment would change the course of modern psychology. To Jung, this was not chance. It was synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence between an inner event and an outer one, connected not by cause, but by symbol and resonance. The beetle didn't prove magic. It proved something far more dangerous to the rational mind, that reality may be more connected than we realize, that the inner and outer worlds are not separate, but mirror reflections of the same underlying truth. Jung believed the psyche has its own timing, its own knowing, and that sometimes the unconscious perceives what is about to emerge before the conscious mind is willing to see it. He didn't invent this idea. In Egyptian mythology, the scarab beetle was a symbol of rebirth, of death, transformation, and the sun reborn. Each morning from darkness, it rolled the sun across the sky like a sacred burden. So when this woman dreamed of a scarab, and one quite literally entered the room, Jung knew he wasn't witnessing coincidence. He was witnessing a conversation between the psyche and the world. He later explained that dreams too often work this way, not as meaningless images, but as symbolic maps of the future. Not fortune-telling, but what he called the prospective function of dreams, the psyche's attempt to prepare us for psychological transformations we're not yet aware of. Think of it like this: the unconscious is constantly gathering information, not just from what you see, but from what you feel, repress, avoid, or fear. It weaves that data into images, symbols, sensations, and sometimes those images point forward to a change, a crisis, a truth you've buried so deeply it has no other way of reaching you. This is not mysticism, it's how we're wired. You felt it too. The déjà vu that leaves you breathless, the dream that comes true, the coincidence that's too perfect to ignore. But here's what Jung did differently. He didn't dismiss it, he studied it. And he listened, because to him these weren't accidents. They were the alphabet of the unconscious, the secret language of becoming. And once you begin to learn that language, the world starts to change. It becomes less random, more symbolic, more alive. It becomes a mirror. And what you see in that mirror may not be who you were, but who you're already becoming. You knew they were lying. You didn't have the words for it, but you felt it. Like a small fracture in the air, a shift in their voice, a pause that lasted just one breath too long. You told yourself you were imagining things. You overrode the unease. You stayed. And later, when the truth surfaced, what hurt most wasn't what they did. It was what you didn't do. You didn't listen to yourself. That moment, that fracture, is something most people carry for the rest of their lives. Not just the betrayal, but the shame of ignoring the warning that came before it. Carl Jung understood this. He believed the soul often speaks before the mind is ready to hear. That intuition is not a vague whisper, it's a deep perception, an unconscious scan of everything you're unwilling to name. To Jung, this knowing doesn't arrive randomly. It's precise. It arrives in the form of pattern, subtle repetition, emotional resonance that doesn't make logical sense. Yet, and when it arrives in the form of dreams, Jung saw them not as stories from the past, but as preparations for what's to come. He called this the prospective function of dreams, not prophecy, orientation. He once said, "The dream is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the soul." A woman once told me she dreamt of a fox slipping through her bedroom door. It stared at her, watched her, then vanished. The next day she learned her partner had been lying to her for months. She didn't need a dream journal. She needed someone to tell her, "You're not crazy, you're intuitive. The psyche always knows first." Jung believed that dreams and gut feelings arise from the same source, a deep, symbolic intelligence within the unconscious. And sometimes they're not just reacting to danger, they're preparing you for change. But if we've learned to ignore them, to silence them, to call them irrational, then we don't just risk heartbreak, we risk losing our connection to ourselves. Because here's what no one tells you: when you override your intuition, you teach yourself not to trust your own voice. And that erosion is far more dangerous than any external betrayal. This is where the shadow begins to grow. Jung taught that the shadow isn't just the part of us that's hidden in shame or fear. It's also the part that holds our unclaimed gifts, intuition, instinct, foresight. And if those gifts are exiled long enough, they begin to work against us. You'll start sabotaging your own peace. You'll walk into situations you already know aren't right. Not because you're blind, but because you've learned to distrust your inner sight. And yet, intuition doesn't give up on you. Even after betrayal, even after silence, even after years of not listening, it waits. Because intuition isn't angry, it's loyal. It won't shout, it won't demand, but it will whisper again the moment you slow down enough to hear it. So ask yourself, how many times have you said, "I knew it, I just didn't act"? How many times have you carried the grief of being right too early? That pain is not weakness, it's the ache of a gift you haven't fully reclaimed. And if you felt that pain, it means the gift is still alive. It means your inner voice didn't leave. It means there's still time to come back to it, because your intuition doesn't need to predict the future, it only needs one thing: your permission to matter again. You want to know what's coming. Everyone does. We stare at calendars, spreadsheets, horoscopes, and data sets, all trying to catch a glimpse of the next thing, all trying to gain control. But Carl Jung would ask, what if control is the very thing blocking your vision? He believed there was a paradox in the human psyche, that the harder we try to predict the future, the less we can feel it. That true knowing doesn't come from force, it comes from alignment. He once wrote, "Where wisdom reigns, there is no conflict between thinking and feeling." But for most of us, the conflict is all we know. We overthink what our body already sensed. We dismiss what arrived as a whisper until it's too late. And that's the tragedy, because we do feel things. We do sense the shift before it arrives. We just don't trust it. Why? Because we live in a culture that reveres logic and discredits everything else. And to be clear, logic matters, but so does pattern, so does meaning, so does that chill you felt when nothing had happened yet. Modern science offers a critique. Daniel Kahneman, the brilliant psychologist, warns us about System 1. The fast, intuitive part of the brain prone to bias, confirmation bias, pattern-seeking, hindsight distortion. And he's right. We do create stories where there are none. We do get it wrong. But what if sometimes we don't? What if your irrational feeling isn't just a glitch? What if it's the first signal that something deeper is moving? Because here's another truth. We don't just regret being wrong. We often regret not listening. We say, I knew something was off. I should have trusted myself. Something didn't feel right. Those aren't random errors. They're memory, emotional memory, symbolic memory, body memory. And Jung believed these signals mattered. He saw synchronicity as the outer mirror of the inner event, a meaningful coincidence, a pattern that isn't causal but resonant. He saw the unconscious not as noise, but as an intelligent ecosystem trying to communicate through symbols. And when we stop needing certainty, we begin to recognize those symbols. We begin to see signs, not as magic, but as mirrors, a missed train, a recurring number, a person you think of moments before they appear. It's not superstition, it's connection. But the price of feeling these signals is letting go of control. And that's the paradox. You must surrender the need to know in order to begin to sense. You must be willing to feel foolish, to be misunderstood, to listen to a silence that the world doesn't validate. But in that space, between logic and letting go, something else opens, clarity. Not the kind that comes from proof, but the kind that comes from resonance. So, if you're searching for signs, ask yourself, are you quiet enough to hear them? Are you still enough to feel them? Because the future doesn't always shout. Sometimes it barely breathes. And if you want to hear it, you have to stop talking over it. You have to stop asking for it to arrive like a fact sheet. It won't. It arrives as instinct, as poetry, as presence. And if you allow it, it may remind you that what you call a premonition is just the part of you that never stopped listening. We think of the future as a destination, a point on a map, something to chase down, control or predict, but Carl Jung didn't see it that way. He believed the future was already inside you, not laid out like coordinates, but carried like a voice, soft, persistent, and too often ignored. That voice isn't loud, it doesn't shout over the noise of your life. It's the one that rises in quiet moments when something feels right or wrong. And you can't explain why. To Jung, this wasn't mysticism, it was depth psychology. The self, the full totality of who you are, includes not just your past and present, but the blueprint of your becoming. When you feel a pull towards something irrational, intense, or oddly familiar, that may not be a distraction, that may be direction. James Hillman, one of Jung's most poetic successors, called this inner pull the daimon, an invisible presence that carries your unique calling. He believed we don't invent our lives, we remember them. Each of us, he said, carries an acorn, a hidden image of who we were meant to become. And it speaks through longing, obsession, repeated dreams, emotional resonance we can't rationalize. Not every obsession is pathology, sometimes it's prophecy. Hillman wrote, the soul's code insists that we came into the world with a destiny and the daimon is its carrier. Most of us feel this call at some point. A career that doesn't make sense on paper but won't let go of you. A place you feel drawn to without knowing why. A decision that feels impossible but deeply necessary, and then we suppress it. We label it irrational, we choose certainty over soul, but the daimon doesn't leave. It gets quiet and then it returns through symbols, through dreams, through the ache of a life that feels misaligned. Carl Jung would say, those aren't interruptions, they're messages. They are the future breaking into the present through the only doorway it can find, the unconscious. This idea echoes even further in the work of Teilhard de Chardin, who believed that the universe itself is not just evolving, but being drawn forward by a vision, a gravitational pull toward its own highest form. He called it the Omega Point, a future that isn't just ahead of us, it's pulling us toward it, the way gravity pulls a falling star. What if your future works like that too? What if the feelings you dismiss, the urges, the intuitive sparks, the sudden moments of knowing aren't distractions, but reminders? Not every dream is symbolic, but when a dream returns, when a symbol repeats, when an image haunts you with no explanation, that may not be memory, that may be soul memory. Rainer Maria Rilke once wrote, "The future enters into us to transform itself in us long before it happens." That's the difference between a map and a calling. Maps require planning, calling requires listening. The voice of the future doesn't sound like a command. It sounds like something you already know but forgot how to trust. And if you've ever felt it, really felt it, then you know this truth. The path isn't revealed by logic, it's revealed by resonance. The ache you feel when you're off course, the peace you feel in places you've never been, the strange certainty that something is yours, even when it hasn't arrived yet. That's not fantasy, that's alignment. So stop asking, what should I do? Start asking, what have I always known? And if you've ever felt haunted by unlived potential, that's not your ego failing, that's your future knocking. And maybe it's time to answer. You don't need to learn intuition. You need to remember it. You were born with it, before language, before reasoning, before doubt. But somewhere along the way, you were taught to second-guess the part of you that just knows. So, how do you begin again? Carl Jung believed the best place to start is in your dreams. He didn't see them as meaningless noise. He saw them as the psyche's nightly telegrams. Messages from the unconscious, written in symbol, story, and emotion. He wrote, "Dreams are the guiding words of the soul. Dreams don't speak in facts, they speak in images. The dark forest, the broken staircase, the animal that won't stop watching you. Don't try to translate them with logic. Just receive them, write them down. Sit with them like riddles that already live inside you. Because sometimes dreams aren't explanations, they're preparations." Jung called this the prospective function, the dream's ability to orient you toward what's coming, emotionally, spiritually, symbolically. The psyche knows when something is shifting, and it often tells you before you're ready to hear it. But intuition doesn't only live in dreams, it shows up in synchronicities, those strange, meaningful coincidences that shake your sense of what's random. You think of someone and they reach out. You read a phrase that echoes a dream you had 2 nights before. Jung believed these moments are not accidents. They are moments when the inner and outer worlds briefly align, revealing that maybe they were never separate at all. To live more intuitively, you don't need a gift. You need permission to listen without proof, to pause when something feels off, to trust that you don't always need to explain what you know. That's not recklessness. That's remembering how to be in relationship with your own depth. Jung also taught a method called active imagination, where you consciously interact with images from your dreams or unconscious. You sit with a symbol, you ask it what it wants, you let it respond, not as a metaphor, but as a presence. This is the work of becoming whole again, of re-establishing trust between your conscious self and the deeper intelligence within you. And perhaps the most powerful act you can take is doing your shadow work. Because for many of us, the part of us that once trusted deeply is now buried beneath shame, silence, or trauma. Maybe you were told you were too sensitive. Maybe someone made you feel foolish for trusting your gut. Maybe you ignored a premonition once and the consequences hurt too much to face again. But that part of you, that wounded, quiet, intuitive part isn't gone. It's waiting to be honored, to be reclaimed, to be allowed back into the conversation. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." To become who you truly are, you have to trust what you already know, the truth that existed before you learned how to doubt it. So here's how you start. Tonight, write down your dream. tomorrow, notice what repeats. Pause when something resonates. Speak gently to the part of you that still knows how to listen. And if this video has reminded you of that voice, the one that sees before it can explain, then share your story in the comments, because someone else is doubting their knowing right now, and your words might be the sign they've been waiting for. You don't need to predict the future, you just need to stop silencing the part of you that already feels it coming. You don't need permission, you just need to begin. And once you do, the whispers get louder. The world becomes more alive, and what once felt like coincidence becomes conversation, because the signs were never missing. You were. But now you're here, and now you remember.